This is HighIntensityBusiness.com with Lawrence Neal, helping you achieve your health and fitness goals. Become a great personal trainer and build your high-intensity strength training business.
This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I have ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all of the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and get $500 off install when you place an order, please go to arxfit.com and mention HIB, that's High Intensity Business, in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $500 off install when you place an order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter HIB in the How Did You Hear About Us field. Lawrence Neal here. Welcome back to HighIntensityBusiness.com. This is episode 270. And today's topic, super important topic, how to recover your high-intensity training business. We're going to be talking about different phases that we're going to all be going through over the next few years, and how you can plan your own strategy to maximize your success over that time period. Today's guest is Luke Carlson. Couldn't think of anyone more ideal to come on the show to talk about this. For you, those of you who don't know Luke is the founder and CEO of Discover Strength, a fast-growing personal training business based in Minneapolis and 4 other personal training facilities in Minnesota. Discover Strength offer a variety of strength training sessions facilitated by educated and expert trainers. Their personal training facilities are among the highest volume and revenue training facilities in the United States. And I imagine that's probably truer now than ever with the success you've had on the virtual front, Luke. Welcome back to the show.
Lawrence, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So excited to get into this episode with you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add the resources that you and I have already created, that you've created with the Rec Focus webinar, into the show notes for this, because a lot of the stuff that was discussed in there will be very useful to people planning their recovery. And what I want to do is create like a one-stop shop recovery resource for everyone. So that would include how to prepare for coronavirus, which is where I had both Luke and Mike Petrella talking about how they were preparing for it. And it's quite interesting how accurate you both were on certain things. And that was a long time ago now, with everything going so slowly, or at least feels like it's going so slowly during the lockdown. So I put that in the show notes first in order. And then also you've got the Rec Focus webinar, which was fantastic. But if you want to fast forward to stuff related to recovery, at 1 hour 54, Luke starts talking about mindset, team, retention, marketing, revenue generation, cutting costs, etc. Again, things related to recovery strategy. And then in one of our most recent podcasts, episode 269, Luke talks about how to generate $44,460 per week with virtual personal training. He actually eclipsed that number, I believe. And in that episode, we again talk about recovery and the 3 phases that we're going to be digging into in more detail in this podcast. So, Luke, I figured we'd start with some sort of chronology to this. So we're currently in kind of pre-phase 1. Do you know what, actually, do you want to just talk about the 3 phases, high level, and then we'll go into the specifics on each phase?
Absolutely. So I mentally was just kind of thinking through how do we plan, how do we adapt, And I estimated that there's really probably 3 phases that we're all going to go through. So every hit business, but every business in general, like consumers are going to go through 3 phases. And these are unofficial. I kind of made them up, but I think they're a good model. So the first phase is like back to business. So most of the world is just entering this right now to different degrees. Most of the US is entering this to different degrees. So this is restaurants are opening up at maybe 25% capacity. Gyms are going to start opening up with some social distancing. We're opening up some beaches. We no longer have shelter in place and stay at home orders. So you get the idea. We are now getting back to business. And what are the chief thoughts there? It's like, well, how do we keep things clean? How do we social distance, et cetera? So that's phase 1. How do we get back to business? Our studios are now opening up again. Phase 2. So phase 1 is how do we navigate all that? That's phase 1. Phase 2 is everything after that up until there's a vaccine. So phase 2 lasts for, 12 months or 18 months. It's the new normal pre-vaccine. So let's just fast forward. Okay. So in most issues, most problems, most crisis situations, there's an incremental improvement after the event, after the crisis. I don't know if we'll have an incremental improvement throughout phase 2, right? Like if there's not a vaccine, this is still going to be an issue. There's certain things we're not going to be able to do even 8 months from now. Like we're probably not going to go to sporting events with 50,000 fans all right next to each other. And I don't have a crystal ball, but we anything that involves massive crowds is probably going to be out. All right. So how we travel, how we interact, how we gather, those things are going to be impacted. So that's all phase 2. Phase 3 is everything post-vaccine. But let's be clear. Phase 3 is not 2019 all over again. It is the new normal post-vaccine. So there's going to be just changes to how we do work, changes how we interact. So a simple example would be we're going to do a lot more Zoom calls post-vaccine. Why? Because we all know how to use Zoom now. Like how many grandparents were Zooming with their grandchildren 3 months ago? They just were not. Now everyone is. We're going to continue to do that because it's just convenient and it works. That's one of 100 or 1,000 different things that are going to be a part of this new normal post-vaccine. And one of the things, let's just skip right to it for our space, how people are consuming fitness right now, it's changing. Is it going to go back to exactly what it was like in 2019? I don't know. Maybe people are going to stream workouts from home on an ongoing basis. And they're not going to go back to health clubs. Not because they don't think health clubs are safe. It's because they realize this is pretty convenient to do it in my home. And maybe the providers of streaming workout options, maybe they've really refined that. Now, of course, Lawrence, you and I, your listeners probably don't agree with that, but I'm talking about the rest of the health club world. So those are all phase 3 things. So phase 1 is back to work. Phase 2 is the new normal up until there's a vaccine. And phase 3 is the new normal post-vaccine. And I just think we have to prepare for all 3 of those.
Yeah, that's an awesome way to start this. Thank you for just setting the scene there on the phases. So I thought we would talk about kind of pre-phase 1, which in my mind is now leading up to back to business. And I'd love to hear what you guys are planning at Discover Strength. What does your plan look like pre-phase 1?
So here it's you have to think about as a business what you want to do. And then you have to combine it with whatever your local government regulations are. So we can come up with all the things that we want, but the government may say, well, you actually have to do these things also. So we have to be prepared for that. For us, here's what it involves. So we're not going to be too different than too many other businesses. Masks. So every one of our trainers will wear a mask when they train clients. And we're going to give all of our trainers a couple masks, and they can just wash and rotate through those masks.
Will it be DS branded mask?
Yeah, we just ordered those yesterday. Yep. So we made the mistake of ordering like 500 that weren't DS branded, and then I found a company that brands them, and I thought, shoot, we should have just started with those. Yeah.
Oh, well, I was kind of kidding. That's amazing.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually a company she's a longtime client. She used to be in my Vistage group. Now she's in a different Vistage group, and they make basically all of the uniforms, the costumes, if you will, for NFL, NBA cheerleaders and dance teams. And so they obviously that's like dried up right now. So they pivoted and now they're making masks, and they've made masks for like every NFL team and every NBA team, and they're selling them online. Those teams are. So it's kind of a cool pivot as a business. So our trainers will have masks. Then we will mandate that all of our clients have masks. Now, most of our clients are going to have masks because most people at this point have a mask. I was just talking with my leadership team yesterday. I think I might be the only human that like doesn't have a mask. Like if I wanted to walk into Costco, which is a massive discount retailer here, they don't allow you in without a mask, and I don't have a mask. So I might not be, I don't know what I would do. But most of our customers, by the time we open in a week or two, will have masks. If they don't, we will provide them, but we will charge for that mask because we just can't have thousands of sessions come through and every time give out a free mask. I mean, our costs would be too high. So masks are number one. And we're going to market, we're going to communicate up front that you have to have a mask. All of our trainers will have masks. Number two is how we clean machines. So for many, 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 many years, we've had Cavicide bottles or bottles with Cavicide in them, and then towels spread throughout the facility. So Lawrence gets off the machine, he gets some sweat on the machine. I grab a spray bottle, I spray the machine or spray the towel, wipe it off. Well, the perception I think can be, well, that towel is not very clean. It's been here all day long. And yeah, there's a lot of Cavicide on it, but that just doesn't seem clean. So when we went into this whole COVID season, we bought large stand-up like canisters of gym wipes is the name of the product. So you just pull one wipe out and then you wipe off, whatever you're using. Now that can get expensive if you use too many wipes. I saw this sign first at the Gainesville Health and Fitness Center, which you've had Joe Cirilli and you've had Adrian on the podcast over time, the Gainesville Health and Fitness Center, massive, massive health club. And they actually have a sign on their gym wipe saying, hey, one gym wipe is designed to actually clean up to 4 machines. Because what they would have is they'd have a member walk up to the gym wipes and treat it like it's a box of Kleenex and just go boom, 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 grab like 3 of them. And it was just costing them a fortune. And they are so frugal and so smart with their money, and they've saved so much money on that. I digress. So now we have these gym wipe stations all over our facilities, and we purposely place them where they're visible. Like we did not want to hide them. Normally that's something we'd want to put like strategically where you can't see it. We wanted to put this front and center where you can see it. So that's our cleaning protocols. The gym wipes are there. Before you get on a machine, the trainer is going to clean everything. Right when you get off the machine, the trainer is going to clean everything. And when I say everything, it's all of the upholstery that you're on, as well as the handle that you'd actually be touching. So that's the cleaning protocol. We have thermometers. So we're going to take every staff member's temperature when they come in, and we're going to take every client's temperature when they come in. And we're not going to allow you to work out if you're running a fever at all.
Awesome. Okay. So
those are our keys. The last one, and this is not necessarily cleaning, we're not going to have any of our lobby furniture in place because we don't want to have a collection of people waiting in the lobby. So we're removing the lobby furniture, and we're going to have our trainers actually greet our clients and let them in the facility so they don't actually have to touch the front door. We don't want our client touching the door.
Okay. So what? So when is your open date? Your official open date, at least for now.
So today, as we talk, let's say the 9th of May. Our plan is the 18th, but we could get an update from our governor that we have to change that. Right now, that's what we're planning on.
Okay. So what is the focus from the 9th to the 18th? I mean, obviously you just detailed your kind of transmission mitigation plan there, but is it just to continue to drive virtual training revenue in the meantime?
Absolutely. Before we open, we have to have the highest revenue base that we can possibly have because, Lawrence, every one of your listeners, we have no idea. Are people going to rush back to the studios or not? So we want to make sure we're growing virtual training all the way up until the studios actually open. And if you ask me right now, of all the sessions that we do that first week, what percentage of them will take place in studio versus what percentage will take place virtually? I have no idea. So we have to be prepared. And so we're going to try to continue to grow virtual training in the meantime.
And, I did a podcast with Jeff Tomaszewski recently, which was fantastic, and which will be out Monday, the 11th of May. So before this one. And it's all about marketing strategy. And we focus a lot on how Jeff has marketed virtual, how he's marketing for the reopen. And I shared this email, excellent bit of copywriting from Jeff, who's got a real strength in copywriting and online marketing, which he wrote to explain to his clients what they're doing from a transmission mitigation perspective, but also a survey at the end to gauge willingness to return to the studio. And he's very clever, again, with copywriting and subject lines and things like that. And he got a fantastic participation rate, open rate, click-through rate on that survey. And so he's got a feel for what the return to business is going to be like. Obviously, it's just a feel because people say one thing, they do another, right? So you don't truly know. But I'm just curious, are you doing anything like that to gauge the willingness from your clients to return to studio? Have you got any mechanisms in place to try and measure that and get some kind of data on that?
So I think that's one of the most interesting conversations that we can have on this podcast is, should you survey and ask your clients? So Jeff had told me he was going to do that. I think it's a great idea. I had a client reach out and say, hey, the spa or the salon that I go to, this is the survey they sent out. You should be surveying us and asking us, when are we going to come back? Do we feel comfortable coming back? What do we want to see in place when we come back in terms of cleaning, safety, disease spread mitigation protocol? And what we've been talking about as a team is, do we want to do that? The only thing I wonder about, and I don't feel convicted about this, I just don't know. If you send a survey and ask, is it somehow communicating that you don't really know, that you don't have a plan, that you're not convicted, that you're not sure, like, is it safe to come back, et cetera? And so I don't know if we're going to do that or not. And maybe one luxury we have is we have a big enough staff, and I think our staff's flexible enough, where if we don't see enough people scheduling in the studio, we can shift our staff to just opening up their availability to do more virtual. So it won't be a perfect launch the first few days, but you know what? People schedule out, Lawrence. It's not like we're going to announce the studio's open and everyone's going to work out the next day. They schedule all week long. And if the schedule looks really light in studio, we'll just shift our availability so we have more trainers available for virtual, and we'll make that pivot. We right now do not think we're going to do a survey, and we could change our mind on that. But right now, I don't think we're going to, because I always ask, what could we learn in the survey that's going to change our behavior, change our offering? And I'm not sure. We're still going to do the cleaning protocol regardless of what we hear in a survey, because we think it's the right thing. Okay. So what would we hear in a survey that would change our behavior in all of this? Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. It's not something I've thought about, and it's a really interesting perspective. So yeah, I mean, it's almost like you might be relatively passive. I mean, I'm guessing you will announce that your studios are open, though, right? To your list and to your existing clients.
Oh my gosh, we're going to market like crazy. And my whole team knows this. We're going to market like crazy what our cleaning protocol is, what our safety protocol is. When I say market like crazy, I don't mean like long paragraphs about what we're doing. I mean graphics that have icons that show this is what we're doing, so you can take a glance at it and know this is what Discover Strength's doing. I mean, like, we want to own this. Like, we have what we call the 6 first principles. This is like inside Discover Strength stuff, and people may think it's boring, but there's just 6 things that we think make the Discover Strength experience special. Just 6 things. It's an obsession with just 6 things. And one of those 6 things is clean. Like, we think the best way to grow a profitable personal training business is to have a surgically clean facility. So we said, okay, we've always said that. Now we just have to do that in the age of Corona, right? And so we're going to communicate to our customers what we're doing from a cleaning standpoint, so they know. And it just can't be a long, boring communication. So it's got to be visual, and they got to see what we're doing, whether it's graphics, whether it's icons of the different cleaning protocol, All of our staff are trained where when you clean, you have to clean in front of the client and you have to tell them what you're doing and why you're doing it. You can't just clean. So we used to, in the old days, Lawrence gets off a machine and it's sweaty. We wiped off that sweaty machine. Well, guess what? The client who just used the machine and got it sweaty didn't care. What they care about is they're about to get on a machine and they wonder, I wonder if this machine's ever cleaned. So from an optics standpoint, you clean the machine before someone gets on it, not when they get off of it. Now, in COVID, that changes, but it's about, did the client see you do it? Do they understand how you're doing it or why you're doing it? So we'll train on all of that. And all of our staff know that when we do get the clearance to open, expect to come in and role play all of our cleaning procedures, protocols, how we open the door for someone. We may have to wave people in from their car, have them wait in their car so they're not congregating in the lobby. We'll role play all of that as well.
Okay. Now, are you the other 5 top secret? Are you able to expand or elaborate on those?
Yeah, I'd rather not.
That's
go
fine.
into those.
That's fine. So I appreciate that. And so we're kind of, I guess we're moving into phase 1. And I think for people who, because it's funny, right? Like we don't know if that date's going to get pushed back for Minnesota. Every state has a well, actually, I don't know. Maybe you know this better than I, Luke, but it seems like different states have different opening dates. I hear some people opening in June and July. And then obviously, if we're talking globally, the UK and Ireland, for instance, won't be opening any gyms till August the 10th, is my understanding.
When was that announced?
What, the UK and Ireland?
Yeah.
That was announced maybe a couple of days ago. So there's a 5-phase approach. The first phase is May the 18th. The final phase is phase 5 is August the 10th. Why?
I didn't realize that. I had just heard Denmark was the same, but I thought Denmark was the only one that was August. I did not know that about the UK and Ireland. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's funny, right? It changes so quickly. I checked that yesterday morning. Maybe it's changed, and we're recording this on 9th of May. So, there you go. But for those who don't open and are still interested in pre-phase 1, then check out episode 269, where Luke talks all about generating revenue with virtual personal training, which will help you with that. But getting back to phase 1, I don't know if you saw this, Luke, but Bill Simone did a great find and shared this document on Facebook. I think it's from the AHA, and it's a whole checklist for preparing your personal training business for the right transmission prevention hygiene measures. And it's very detailed, but it's like checklist fashion, very easy to implement, and thought to be very useful. So I will link that up in the show notes to this. I've been sharing it all over social because I thought it'd be valuable to people.
I did see it, and we printed it, and we're going to go through it in our meetings to decide, what parts of this are we implementing. So I do think that's a great tool.
Yeah, and I'll link to that. So that's I think it's AHA is the organization behind that. So I'll link that up in the show notes for this episode 270. So yeah, again, phase 1, back to business, virus transmission prevention. One of the things you said to me on a previous podcast is that people, want supervised training more than ever. They want connection with people more than ever. They're socially isolated. They need help. A lot of people have been, let's not beat around the bush. The majority of people have probably been incredibly sedentary these last few months and have eaten badly and not exercised and have fallen off the wagon. So I feel like these people need our help more than ever. So do you think again, I know we're kind of hypothesizing here. We don't really know, but do you feel there will be a rush back to the studios for a lot of people, or do you think there'll be more growth in virtual, or what do you think?
It depends how you define rush back. I think some customers will literally rush back. They will be more excited than ever. They will be the first to schedule. They'll want their time slot. They might increase their frequency. But when we say rush back, that doesn't mean your numbers are going to be as good as they previously were. So whatever the units are, if you're doing 100 sessions in a week, will you come back at 100 sessions? I doubt it. I think you're going to come back at 50 sessions. But of those 50 people, you're going to have people that are really excited and would maybe pay double to be back, right? So I don't think you're going to hit those numbers. I think the key to phase one, as much as we talk about cleaning protocol and sanitation and all of that, I think the key to phase one is, are you still growing your virtual as you come back to the studios? If you shift your mindset to the age of virtual is now over and now we're back to studio, I think you're going to miss out. I think you have to think about the marriage between virtual and in studio so that you can grow your revenue as a whole. Like, what is your responsibility? Your responsibility is to grow revenue. And another way to say grow revenue is service your customer. So service your customer doesn't mean we're either doing virtual or we're either in the studio. It's how are you doing both? I mean, the mandate for the business owners to continue to profitably grow revenue. And so I think it's going to be both. I think it's going to be virtual and in studio. And I think you're going to make a massive mistake if you just think virtual is now done and now we're in the studio.
And this almost like harks back to what you were saying about locus of control at the beginning of the Rec Focus episode. Focus on how is it you put it? The area of concern. How was it you worded it again?
Yeah, so if you look at like three circles, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. The inner circle is your circle of control, and then one circle outside of that is your circle of influence, and then one circle outside of that, the biggest circle, is your circle of concern. So circle of concern, like you care about that, but you can't do anything. One layer inside, well, that's your circle of influence. You can't control it, but you can definitely influence it. And then at the very inside, the inner portion is your circle of control. So spend most of your time in the circle of control, a little bit in the circle of influence, and zero time in your circle of interest, the furthest out circle, the most peripheral.
Yeah, and so many people are spending too much time in those other wider, bigger circles, and being much less productive as a result. And I guess, bringing it back to this point, it's like, well, people are, who are focused on, things will return back to normal. I can just focus on in studio training. That is kind of out of their control. Maybe they can influence that with some marketing, but it is largely out of their control. Whereas the virtual training is probably more within their control, and that's something they should be more focused on trying to grow, since there's clearly a demand for people to train from their homes virtually. So that would make sense to me. Okay, so in terms of, I guess, seeing what else we can discuss about phase one, what else do you think is really important for business owners to consider? I don't know, maybe you could talk about marketing ideas that you have that you're willing to share about back to what, promoting sort of the back to business phase.
I just think the key with the marketing is that it's really pithy, it's really short, and you're telling people what you're doing in terms of a cleanliness standpoint, but you're making that story really, really short and easy to digest. And I know that sounds like a cliche. I just haven't seen it done very well. I haven't seen it done very well with any brands. Is I want to be able to look on your social. I want to be able to get the email from you in a split second. I want to understand without a lot of mental load. I want to understand, what are you doing, and will I be safe when I come into your place of business? And that's it. So how do you make it really short and easy to digest? Mm-hmm. So I think there's an art form to that. I think we really need to work. Is it the Hemingway quote? If I would have had more time, I would have written a shorter letter, right? So like, to make something pithy and to make it really, really concise, it takes some planning.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, something you've been saying a lot about lately is how everyone needs to get a little bit more better at the online game in terms of getting their website updated, starting to perhaps give away value online through videos, social media, graphics, various different tactics they can employ there. Lead magnets, which are like, just value-based resources, PDFs on the website, to start growing the email list as well. And these are things which I guess are more important now than ever. Could you speak on, I guess, your experience? Because Luke, you were quite humble the other day. You kind of said how you didn't know a great deal about influencer marketing, and I don't know, maybe online marketing isn't one of your strengths. I don't know. But maybe you can speak on what you've learned from that perspective recently, and why you think that might be really important right now.
Well, to take it one step back, Lawrence, I think we need to market right now. I think too many of us have the mindset, and I've even fallen into this mindset that my goal is to serve my customers, my clients, and when we open back up, get my clients to come back in the door. Well, that's true, but we have a massive opportunity to acquire new clients right now, right? Like every gym and every fitness facility has been closed down. And when they open up, like I'm sitting here at one of our studios right now, and we are less than 5 miles away from the corporate world headquarters of Lifetime Fitness, like the second biggest health club chain in the world. I mean, like they did almost $2 billion in revenue this year, and they're closed down, right? Completely closed down. And when they reopen, when this massive 120,000 square foot structure reopens, is everyone going to rush back to those clubs and jump on treadmills and sweat in group exercise classes with all of their friends? I don't know. And so every studio owner listening to this right now should say, wow, of all those exercisers, of all those health club members, can I acquire 1% of them or 5% of them as clients? And what would I have to message, and how would I tell stories to them about how my club is safe, and about how we're one-on-one, and about how we can control so many of those variables, and the experience here is so different. So I think now is a time to grow and market externally. So how do you do that? I think the most powerful way to do that is to leverage email lists, right? It's the most powerful marketing tool that we know of. So your website should capture email addresses. And how do you capture email addresses? Well, you provide value. So people, click on a transitional call to action. They click on something they would have interest in, and in order to get whatever that is, they give you their email address, and then now you have their email, and you can set up campaigns where you're constantly emailing them, and it's all automated. And those emails are written in the right way, where they're providing value and they're pulling you into the story, and there's a call to action at the end, and this goes on, email after email after email. And then eventually they become a customer, and they try a free introductory workout or whatever your sales process is. But you automate that. And we did more introductory workouts 1 week ago than we've done in company history.
Wow.
This past month. So we're in May right now, but April, we did more introductory workouts in April than we've done in 14 years of business. And we're closed. I mean, we're closed, outside of virtual. So you can still grow the business right now if we continue to market. Now is not the time to sit back. Hannah and I have had meetings, hour-long meetings with 5 different advertising and marketing agencies that we're interviewing to talk about how do we want to grow our virtual training, and how do we tell the story of virtual training outside of our market. We think, well, there's a huge opportunity right now. So part of this phase 1 is not how do you communicate with your current clients that you're now opening your studio. How do you market to everyone that's in your target market in your geography.
How many introductory workouts did you do last week then?
Okay, so I don't know last week. I'd have to look. I'd have to open up the scorecard, which I could. But I know in April we did over 145.
Wow, that's awesome. So
for us, that's a lot, right? A small studio, 145 introductory workouts. Like that's nuts. There's months where we're pretty happy because we did 50 or 60. So we're just thrilled.
Absolutely. That's great news. This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, ARX. Are you looking to create a cutting-edge, high-intensity training facility? Are you confused on what equipment to use or how to separate yourself from the masses? Well, then ARX Fit might be the answer you're looking for. I asked Mike Polano from ARX a few questions about how ARX machines are challenging the status quo of the exercise industry around the globe. Mike, if you could, give the listeners a quick summary of why ARX is so different from the traditional machines or tools they're used to seeing in most exercise facilities.
ARX is totally different than anything you've seen before. This isn't just another weight stack machine. We've looked at the last 40 years of exercise technology and used that knowledge to create something entirely new. ARX uses a new form of resistance, a motor, and we pair that motor with computer software so that we can maximize the safety, effectiveness, and efficiency of your workouts. So you may be asking, okay, but how does ARX compare to weights? Traditional machines you see in gyms today are based on lifting metal weights and battling gravity. What people don't realize is that when you're forced to lift a static weight like this, one that doesn't adapt or change while you use it, you're underloading yourself rep after rep. And this unnecessarily limits your ability to make improvements. With ARX, we've taken a totally different approach. We removed weights and gravity from the equation altogether. Instead, ARX combines our patented motorized resistance with our custom computer software to provide you with the world's safest, most effective, and most quantified form of resistance training ever. When you train with ARX, you are training to your perfect level of resistance, both positively and negatively 100% of the time. No more guessing what weight to use. ARX does all of that for you, instantly and automatically. We'll also track and measure every second of every rep, so you can quantify all of your workouts to find out if you're improving and by exactly how much. Whether your goals are bigger muscles, increased strength, stronger bones, or just to look good in a bathing suit, ARX can help you achieve all of these and more, but do so in a fraction of the time it would take compared to traditional equipment. If you're looking for the most efficient, most effective, and most quantified piece of exercise equipment on the market today, then look no further than ARX.
Thanks, Mike. That all sounds really impressive. If you'd like to learn more about ARX, visit arxfit.com and mention that you heard about ARX on the High Intensity Business podcast to receive an exclusive deal of $500 off shipping and installation of your ARX machines. And there is one last question I had on the virtual, actually, before we kind of move on. One thing you've been saying, which I just think is really interesting, is you've been talking about how most of the market, when it comes to virtual training, is people watching someone train, people watching a trainer. Whereas the difference with this is they are being watched by a trainer. So you have a Discover Strength personal trainer watching someone, making sure they train with correct form, giving them motivation, providing excellent supervision, helping them get much better results versus the opposite. And I just curious, I knew going into this that there were lots of people delivering health coaching, fitness services online, but in the capacity of the former, so the more traditional approach where they're watching the trainer. I've got to be honest, I don't know many people that are actually doing it in the way that you and many of our colleagues are doing it now. And so do you think that's like almost a unique offering? What have you seen in terms of your own research in the market, looking at what other companies are doing related to what you're doing? Like, is it unique or?
It's two massive things. Everyone switched to virtual, but they didn't switch to virtual. I mean health clubs, but they didn't switch to virtual as a revenue stream. They switched to virtual to service, provide value, placate their customers until their gym or their club could open, which I think is a mistake, right? Like, we need to actually make money in this time. So that's the mistake number one, or difference number one. Difference number one is our virtual is actually driving revenue, and the rest of our colleagues' virtuals are driving revenue, right, in this space. And the second difference, and this is the genius, and it's so simple that like no one in high intensity training realizes it's genius because it's just like in our DNA. And I'll just say it a little bit more succinctly than you, is you just flip the script. The rest of the industry, we're watching fit people work out. With what we're all offering is, no. We, the trainer, are watching you work out. You don't need to watch a fit person work out. They need to watch you work out and give you that feedback. So that's the whole difference. And that is a massive difference. And think about it. Every other virtual service, that's what it is. Like, right? Like, you can do like telemedicine right now. My sister-in-law is a physician and she can do an exam with a patient. But guess what she has to do? She has to see the patient. The patient's not staring at her. She needs to see the patient. The same is true with personal training. And it just absolutely, I'm just utterly shocked that the rest of our industry doesn't understand that, because, and I actually know why they don't understand that, because they don't understand the peer-reviewed research that supports how we actually produce fitness results, which is we have expert fitness professionals coach us, supervise us, give us feedback. That's what we need, and the research supports that. But we have, traditionally in our health clubs, we've not provided what people actually need. We've provided them a heck of a lot of what they don't actually need. So Lawrence, you're right. It is just so different from what's out there right now. And even the breakthroughs that we've had, the technological breakthroughs, I don't think we've got to I don't think we've got to the gist of we need a human giving us feedback on what we're doing and what we're not doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's interesting. I have seen some kind of quasi supervised / demonstration approaches where you've got some fitness trainer with a headset doing the exercises. And obviously, we're talking about non-evidence-based resistance training here. So it's all sorts of crap. And they'll be doing it to a laptop, to a camera. They'll have a group on something like Zoom, but it's like, that's not supervision at all. It's just collaboration. It's just a community. That's all it is. And obviously some people get value from that, and that's fine, and maybe that helps them adhere to it. But I think it's totally different it is totally different to the one-on-one supervision that is being offered by you guys and some of our colleagues. And just to layer on top of that, the fact that you're providing evidence-based exercise, whereas a lot of these other quasi-supervised offerings are not providing any evidence-based exercise either. So I just think the opportunity right now is huge for this type of offering. And that was kind of my soapbox moment to kind of try and, as you have been doing, Luke, try and influence our colleagues who aren't adopting this to really, really seriously consider it as a new arm to their business.
Yeah, it's the market conditions are just so ripe for a high intensity studio to do virtual and do it really well with their customers, because everything that we ever thought was important outside of equipment is still just as important, and we can still provide it, right? Like all the ways that we provided value before, we can still provide value. So as horrific as all of this is, we've talked as a team all the time. Like we talked, why have we been able to pivot so successfully? And I came up with 3 reasons. And the number one reason was luck, is that when COVID hit, COVID did not erode all of the specific areas that we provide value. And it did in so many other business models. And so if you're a high intensity training studio and you haven't made the switch to virtual, I think it's borderline. This is too strong of a statement. It's borderline irresponsible, because it still plays to all of our strengths and all the things that our consumers chosen us for.
Absolutely. So let's talk about phase 2 and phase 3. So you've talked about how life might look really great for the studio operator in these phases. Starting with phase 2, which is kind of the from sort of the reopen back to business to the vaccine, right, which could last anywhere from sort of 12 to 18 months, where you envisage probably no large gatherings, right? So no marathons, no big conferences, sports games, things like that. Probably likely to be changes to travel restrictions there as well. So do you want to speak more on what you see happening during this phase and how you feel that our colleagues should be, what they should be planning in terms of addressing this phase in their business?
Yeah, so I think that we're going to need to maintain the same stringent cleaning protocols, safety protocols, maybe even social distancing protocols. One thing I didn't mention is that in our studios, we'll have less trainers in the studio so that we can have more space, number of feet between trainers and clients in the studio. So I think that's important in phase 1, and that's going to be important all the way throughout phase 2. Unfortunately, I just don't think we're going to be able to have as many trainers in a studio at one time. I think that in phase 2, we're going to always have to be aware that we could have a return to phase 1. So if there's another spike or another outbreak in COVID cases, and we have to go back to a shelter-in-place approach, we're going back to phase 1 or pre-phase 1, and we should all be prepared for that we might get shut down again from another outbreak. That's part of phase 2. Otherwise, it's opportunity, right? So in phase 2, you might not be rushing back to movie theaters and large gyms, but people are still exercising. So we maybe have a prolonged period where our studios are even that much more relevant. So remember, phase two, these phases are not like negative things, or they're not depressing. They're just what the new realities are. And the new realities actually provide new opportunities, right? We're never going back, but we're never going back doesn't mean it's a negative thing. It could be a really positive thing. So I would look at phase two as opportunity for training studios, and that people might migrate toward training in smaller spaces as a whole. So I think that part could be really positive. So I think that's one of the defining characteristics of phase two is apprehension to return to large gyms or health clubs, and finding ways where I'm going to exercise in a way that I'm around less people. And our studios definitely could be that solution.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because, like, yeah, you're right. It's downside if you're a higher volume one-on-one studio, really like DS. Then obviously the social distancing will definitely affect the I guess the revenue generated in studio over that period potentially. But then you've got the upside of people transitioning from bigger health clubs. But then you've got the potential of, again, a return to phase one, where, again, it really underscores the importance of focusing on virtual, so that you're almost ready for any outcome if you invest in that now. Because to your point, like, you really don't know how challenging things are going to be in phases 1 to 3. I mean, we hope, obviously, that we come out smelling of roses, and that phase 2 and 3, the hit studio is the go-to destination for fitness enthusiasts, right? So hopefully that will be the case. But it's about being ready for any outcome. And one of the things, go ahead.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. I think phase 2 is actually also defined by creative, visionary, outside the box thinking from the studio owner. So if we know that phase 2 is going to last a minimum of 12 months, and my goodness, I hope we find a vaccine, 6 months from now, and I'm totally wrong. But kind of what we hear is 10 to 18 months for a vaccine timetable. Well, during that time frame, we should be thinking creatively, and we should be thinking about how do we drive revenue. And so one of them is, how do we manage the return to studios? One of them is virtual training. But that's just 2 options. There's a ton of different options. So I just sent a text message to my team last night, and I said, this happens like once every 6 months where I send this text message. I said, I have an idea, and I think it's pretty big. And they said, oh God, does this mean we have to call you? And and they know that means, yeah, we should probably call, because I want to talk through this, because I can't control myself. So I'm trying to think, if we know that this is what the new normal is going to be for 12 months, then I got to be creative and think about other options, right? But we know what the environment is. The environment is people are afraid to be around, large gatherings. They're concerned with safety. They're concerned with sanitation. We know what the realities of COVID are, right? So now what do we do about it for the next 12 months? It'd be one thing if it was just 2 months. It's like, well, should I really brainstorm around just 2 months? It's so temporary. Well, it's going to be here for 12 months. And so what could you do in the next 12 months that would grow your business? So I'm trying to I'm making sure that I'm not just thinking about business in 2019 and 18 and 17 and applying it to phase 2. I'm trying to think about, what does phase 2 allow? And so it's Gino Wickman writes about the concept of the clarity break, right? The clarity break is the discipline of once per week, getting outside of your business. And this is, in your favorite chair, in your family room, or in your den, or a home office, or a coffee shop. Not a coffee shop now, but they're closed. But just getting away with a notebook, no technology, and just thinking for an hour, and just taking great notes about your thoughts. So I think everyone on this podcast right now should say, all right, I need to do a clarity break around what are the new opportunities that are going to arise out of this phase 2 situation, and how can I make money, and how can I service customers, and how can I still play to my strengths over these next 12 months. So that's what I'm trying to do, because when you get in the thick of all of it, you stop ideating, and you stop thinking, and you're in full on execution mode, right? So I'm trying to pause and think about what are some creative ways that we can make money. And that was one of those ideas that I just recently shared with my team.
And that idea is top secret, is it? Because you've got us all excited after you said that.
Well, to be clear, I thought it was brilliant. My team just thought it was okay. I'm not going to share. I'm not going to share it on the podcast because I might get laughed at, and someone might say Luke thought that was a big idea. It's really not a big idea. But when we're done recording, I'll share it with you, and you can judge.
Sure. Well, look, we'll forgive you for that because I think you share so much. You share so much of everything you've learned, of everything that's worked for you, of your strategy, of your tactics in DS, and we are all so grateful. So I think you're well entitled to say, you know what, Lawrence, I don't want to share, that or the previous thing that you mentioned. So I just wanted to say that because I think it's fairly obvious. But anyway,
and I'm not trying to pretend it's a good idea. It might be a horrible idea. The key message is spend some time coming up with your creative thoughts right now. Like if you have a team, you should be getting your team together and say, for 1 hour, we're sitting together and we're just throwing stuff up on a whiteboard. Okay. And it's going to be a virtual whiteboard, a Zoom whiteboard, but like we have to ideate. Like what have we never considered before that was off the table that's on the table now? Different ways that we can make money. And that's how you got to frame it up. Like how are we going to serve our customers? How are we going to provide value to our customers? How could we grow during this time period? And I think we could come up with some really great solutions rather than how can we just hurry up and get back to doing it exactly how we were doing it? And that's tough for me to say out loud because I loved how we were doing it, right? Like I love there's nothing wrong with the previous business model. You know that's how I feel, Lawrence. I don't think anything's broken with high intensity training or a one-on-one training model. I love it. I love a room full of Nautilus and Medix machines and hammer strength and pendulum machines and one-on-one 30-minute work. I love it. But I'm just trying to pause for a second and think about, well, what else could these next 12 months involve?
Absolutely. And that is just a disciplined mindset for any business owner, any leadership team to do that. And, I just want to kind of, again, highlight the importance of that clarity break you mentioned. It's such an important discipline. Many of us get so obsessed with busyness and doing things. And we all know that our best ideas come when we're in the shower. And there's a reason for that, because you're not focused on anything. You're letting your mind kind of work out and figure out and process all of the thoughts you've had. And you need to give your mind space to come up with some of these great ideas. And that kind of discipline of having time where you just reflect, meditate, go for walks with the dog, which is where I get a lot of good ideas. And I have a little voice note app on the phone where when the idea comes up, I just record it and I process them later. It's so important to make space for these things. So I encourage the listeners to create that kind of discipline in their week. Luke, one of the things you said on a previous podcast is that roughly 30% of big health clubs will not reopen. Is that stat still likely to be accurate? And what do you think that means for us?
I've read between 30 and 40%, and I've read that in the US and I've read worldwide. And I've read, when I originally read it, is if we're not open by July 1st, then it's estimated that 30 to 40% will never reopen. Well, based on what you shared with me, and I had read about Denmark just yesterday, that some of some countries are looking at closures through August. That number might be right. 30 to 40% may not reopen. I've had a few HIIT studio owners call me and say they don't think they're going to reopen. They just think this is a good time for them to just decide to make a pivot in what they do, and they're not going to reopen the studio afterwards. So 30, 40% I think is realistic. And I actually think it's all gyms, studios, health clubs, big, small. Gold's Gym just filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which Chapter 11 means you're not closing down. You're just filing for bankruptcy so you can get some protections against like your leases and your the different spaces that that you have contracts with. So, but I think about at least 30 of those clubs are closing permanently in the US. So there's change on the horizon for sure.
So you're saying that actual HIIT studio owners, some of those have decided to pivot completely and not reopen and do something else. Is that correct?
I've had calls from a few that are saying, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. And they haven't maybe made the decision yet. But the longer this goes, I think the more of a possibility that is, clearly.
Yeah, that'd be very sad. And I obviously appreciate why those individuals have to contemplate that. But it would be very sad if that is the case. All right. So again, I want to be positive. I want to be optimistic, and I hope that we are all going to be perfectly positioned for certainly phase 2 and phase 3. Do you want to start talking about? Perhaps we can talk about post-vaccine. I quote you: "Life looks great for the studio operator." And again, I know that you're just, hypothesizing. You're not sure exactly what's going to happen, or maybe there's a lot of conviction in that quote, Luke. So do you want to expand on why you think it's, maybe you've talked about this a little bit already, but I think it'd be good for us to hear your thoughts on why you think it looks great for the studio operator.
So much about life is like consumer habits and consumer behaviors, right? And so right now we're having a shift in behaviors and habits. And one of them I mentioned before was Zoom. So now Zoom is a habit or a behavior that we're going to use more frequently, right? There's an increase globally in digitization right now. Like, it was already a trend. It was happening. We've just accelerated it in this COVID period. And so all of the trends that were taking place, or many of the trends that were underway, have just been accelerated. So you think about how have those habits and behaviors changed? Well, one of them is, if over 12 months, consumers don't feel thrilled about going to places that there's a ton of humans and exercising with a ton of humans around them, and they want to try a smaller, more intimate boutique studio, well, you got 12 months to win them over. Who says they're going to go back to the club after that? Like, we may see, instead of exercising in massive facilities that are 80,000 or 120,000 square feet, maybe the new normal is that humans permanently exercise in facilities that are 1,000 to 3,000 square feet. Like, that could be the new normal. And why? Okay, it's not because it's not safe to go back to 100,000 square feet. It's that I never knew it was an option to go to some place that was 1,500 square feet. 12 months, we all learned that it was an option, and that's what we did, or a huge percentage of us did. And we say, well, I actually like that. And I like that human connection. And by the way, you couple that with the fact that I went 12 months, having at least 3 months, having way less human interaction. I really like the human interaction of being in a small studio. Lauren, you've maybe heard me say this before, but I have a membership at a massive health club. I mean, one of the largest health clubs in the world. And I pay my membership dues, and I've had a membership there for 10 years. And I go and I use the Stairmaster step mill there 2 times per week. Well, I've done that all the way up until late October of this year. And then they got rid of all the Stairmaster step mills that I love. So I just bought one. I found one and I bought it. Actually, I joined your virtual happy hour, the membership virtual happy hour, and I was on that Stairmaster step mill during that happy hour. And I literally have it in a tiny little office at one of our locations because we had an open office and I didn't have room in my condo to put the Stairmaster. And so I just put it at one of our offices. And when we're done with this podcast here, I'm going to go hop on it and use it. I just love using it. Well, I still have this health club membership. And I stop in there and I eat in their cafe, which makes no sense that I'm paying a membership to be able to go and buy a sandwich. But I keep that membership. Well, I go there a minimum of twice per week for 10 years. Sometimes it's 3 times a week because I stop in and buy a smoothie or buy a sandwich, like I said, or pick up dinner to bring home. And for 10 years, no one has ever called me by my first name when I walk in the door. And I hand them my membership card and they swipe it. And I know on a computer screen, my name pops up, right? They've never called me by my name. But no one in that entire club knows my name. I have no connection to that club. And I'm just describing, this is what the average health club member experiences. They have no connection to that club. Well, what is COVID maybe reinforcing in all of us? That human connection, it's a basic human need. And we're going to move toward businesses and brands and experiences that give us that. So maybe we're not going to work out in a 100,000 square foot facility where no one knows our name. We're going to say, hey, I tried working out in a 1,500 square foot spot where everybody knew my name and I was interacting with them and chatting with them nonstop. That's what I want to go back to. And so that could be part of the phase 3 is the human behavior is just changed around that connection. And that's not just size. It's even what we want out of our workout. So I have some great, wonderful colleagues and friends who, when they personally train someone, they say, no, you don't talk to them. You only provide them a little bit of instruction and that's it. But you should not talk to the subject. Well, they may be irrelevant because the consumer may say, no, I want human connection. If you don't connect with me on a human level, I'm going to go work out someplace where I do connect on a human level. Now, that's not a prediction, but like that may be one of the outcomes of this whole COVID situation. Is that something the consumer craves? That's the new normal. So I think we have to just kind of think about what is COVID depriving us of, reminding us of, that we love and that we need, that's part of our humanity, and how do we play to that in the phase 3 environment.
What a great way to start wrapping this one up, Luke. If you don't mind, I've got one final question. Do you have time?
Absolutely.
Great. So one of the things you spoke about again on the Rec Focus episode, you talked about, again, how many businesses right now are talking too much about themselves and not talking enough about the customer and the problems they're having and the solutions to those problems. Case in point, I spoke to one of my own suppliers yesterday, and they complained to me about how the COVID's impacted their business. And all I could think about was you, Luke, and what you said about this, and how much that kind of pissed me off, because I was like, look, we're all impacted by this. And I don't talk to my customers about what's happening to me because it's just not relevant, and I'm just focusing on being of service. And this is just really, really irritating me. And it's whilst I sympathize with their situation, it's like, but we're all kind of going through it, and I just don't think it's very professional. Is my take. But anyway, I digress.
Let me pause there, because it's a perfect point to pause, Lawrence.
Yeah.
Whether it's professional or not is maybe not the key. The fact that they shared that with you and you listened, that's fine, but they will lose 10 times out of 10 to the brand that interacts with you and says, Lawrence, I've come up with 3 different suggestions of how I think I can provide value for you and help you make money and you be more successful during this time. Who do you want to meet with right now? You want to meet with that brand. And so them sharing that with you is not like a horrific thing to do. It's just not very proactive. Like, they will lose to someone who's actually being proactive. The interesting thing is very few brands are being proactive right now.
Yeah, and you said it way better than me. And, case in point, I am moving away from that supplier to a new one. And, it's one of my actions to do probably next week. So there you go. That's not the outcome they probably want, right? Or maybe that is the outcome they want if they agree that we're not a good fit for each other. So anyway, the question I was coming on to is regarding this problem solution. You talked about during COVID, the problem is how you help me deal with COVID, and what's your solution for that? And then you talked about how we should be succinct in our communication and our marketing, and we should be doing that frequently, but we should be succinct and not boring people with paragraphs of content. Now, the new problem will likely be a recession. A lot of people are talking about a 12, 24-month recession, something like that, maybe a depression, who knows? I'd just love to know what kind of tone or marketing or strategy would you recommend to help customers with that problem? Because the first thing that comes to mind is savings and discounts, but you don't want to be devaluing the brand. And maybe I'm thinking about this incorrectly. So I'd love to hear your take on how are you helping people solve that problem?
Yeah, so without getting too specific, because I just don't have the answers right now. When you're marketing, you always have to think about what's the problem that you're solving, right? And there's 3 problems. There's an external problem, like I need a gym, right? There's an internal problem, and there's a philosophical problem. And what I think you have to do is just understand that the problem has probably changed in this COVID time, okay? It doesn't mean that during a recession that your target market can't afford you still. They can afford you. But what they're thinking about, what's going on in their environment, what they're worried about has changed. And so you have to demonstrate some empathy in your marketing by actually speaking to that. Because if you're not speaking to that, I just don't think, we talk about that you as a brand, you're really supposed to be a guide, right? There's two characteristics to the guide: authority, like they know what they're doing, and empathy. And so I think by understanding the problem that your consumer is in, I think that you're demonstrating that empathy. So that doesn't mean you have to specifically say, I know we're in a recession, therefore we've discounted all of our one-on-one personal training rates by 20%. I don't think that's the approach at all. But I think you have to somehow have empathy around if your target market is medium-sized business owners, or they're all salespeople, or you got to think about how your customers make money, and if that's been massively impacted, or if they have a new level of stress with what they're like. So stay-at-home mothers, wealthy families and stay-at-home mothers are your target market. Well, guess what? Those stay-at-home mothers, all of the kids are at home with them right now because they're not going to school. So they have a whole new level of stress. So the COVID situation has created this new normal, and this that really doesn't impact their ability to pay you, but what they're stressed about every day has changed, right? And so the recession will create, or a potential impending recession will create stresses that are multifactorial that I think we have to speak to. So it's not that we just say, hey, I know we're in a recession or a depression and we're going to charge less. I don't think that's the way forward. I just think we have to understand that that's the major problem that so many consumers are going to be thinking about. And maybe it's just this, maybe it's just value. Hey, I know we're in a recession right now and you're concerned about your investments and your whatever. The best investment you can make that produces the greatest ROI is your workout. Right now in a recession, you cannot afford an investment that doesn't 10x, all right? That doesn't return 10 times over what you invested. And your workout is a 10x return. That's how you position it, right? And my goodness, that makes me want to buy workouts more so than ever, because my workout does 10x me. In every way, my workout makes me more valuable. Like if a workout improves my cognitive function and I need to make great decisions right now, this is the time I cannot stop working out during the reset. So there's a million different ways we can frame that up.
Yeah, no, Luke, that was amazing. I'll pause there. I've got to shoot myself, but I know you have other things to do as well. Thanks again so much, Luke, for doing this. This was an awesome podcast. I really appreciate your time. So for everyone listening, to get the blog post for this episode and download the PDF transcript, please go to highintensitybusiness.com and search for episode 270. And until next time, thank you very much for listening.
Discover how to achieve your health and fitness goals, become a great personal trainer, and build a successful, high-intensity training business. Check out highintensitybusiness.com. highintensitybusiness.com.
This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I have ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all of the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and get $500 off install when you place an order, please go to arxfit.com and mention HIB, that's High Intensity Business, in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $500 off install when you place an order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter HIB in the How Did You Hear About Us field.